Matt, welcome to the lab report.
Thank you.
Welcome to South Africa.
Thank you.
Importantly in Cape Town.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Welcome. We've known each other a while now, so it's really good to have you down here. And what do you think of South Africa so far?
So far, beautiful. Great time of year, first day of spring. So wonderful weather, and it's really great to see it here in person.
And you've been from hot to cold.
Yes, hot to cold. Hot in Texas to cold the day that I landed here, and now back to hot. So getting to experience all the seasons.
You're getting true Cape Town weather.
Yes.
And any differences you've noticed here? I know you haven't been here long, but any differences you've noticed here from the US, maybe in the sneaker culture at all?
Quite a few differences. The cars were on the other side of the road, so that was the first thing that I noticed. But in terms of sneaker culture, I walked around the city center, and you can definitely see a difference in influence of sneakers. Basketball is not as much of an influence as in the United States, and that goes down to casual wear. So much more running and football inspired sneakers than in the United States.
Tell me about Nice Kicks and how you got started and the vision.
I started Nice Kicks almost 23 years ago now.
Wow.
And originally originally set it up. The whole project was about selling product. Our first big pivot was in 2006, going towards a blog about shoes rather than actually selling them. And we've stayed in the media space ever since. We've had periods of doing retail and e-commerce as well, but no longer do that. And stick more to the stories of sneakers and supporting our brand partners through helping them tell stories and whatnot.
And still very much sneaker focused, or
It's still very much rooted in sneakers, but when we started out, sneakers was a very, very niche thing.
Yes.
And as sneakers have grown, so too has the purview of the stories that connect to sneakers. So one thing that's really exciting for us is finding the new stories we get to tell that are associated with shoes, but not directly tied, specifically to the products.
Yeah, things have evolved a lot over time in the blog space, and with social media and that. How have you managed to adapt your business and keep the people interested? Consumer. How's that changed?
Innovate or die. We've changed a lot through the years. Evolution has been a big part of it. It's been 22 years in total, or 23 almost. The blog launched almost 18 years ago. Do we still have a website? Yes. Does it act the way that it did in 2006? Absolutely not. It's very different today. It serves a different purpose. You mentioned social media. Social media did exist. We had a MySpace page in 2006. But what social media is in terms of as being the source of information for really the world, that's a very different thing. So, most of the impressions that we serve every month is through different social platforms rather than on our website.
And how is anything specific that you could say that has changed in the way that you're engaging? What gets airtime these days?
Yeah, we were providing much more information purely about the product. Yes, we included the stories with it. I think that was something that made us different from in the early days was including some of the story, adding some of the context. Stories matter more than ever, and that's really what we are looking at when we are approaching our content, is not just the what, but in terms of the shoe, but what's the story and why is this important? Asking those questions before we go to market with something on social.
So what are some of the low points, in building the Nice Kicks brand? And I know there's been changes.
Yeah, for sure.
You've spoken about. What are some of the lows?
Some of the lows are just not being fast enough to adapt to the way that the market is shifting and the way that our role within it. There have been times where we've been slower to adapt than others, and that puts a lot of stress and strain on the business. but through all those times, like, we always learn so much about ourselves, how we can improve, how we can get better, what to do differently next time, and also what signs should we be looking for in the future, and also being much more ready to change. Sometimes once you identify that there is a shift, if you haven't moved, it's too late. You need to be testing and experimenting with things outside of your natural purview of what you do, to potentially find and identify what could be the new thing for your business.
Some of the highs, some things that have stood out for you that you're like, wow, you never thought this would happen, or...
Yeah, I mean, one of the highs, we had an experiment in the pandemic that was quite an interesting product or project. I mean, I first just had this hypothesis that people cared more about receiving information about upcoming shoes through SMS marketing than email. And so I did a experiment to see which one would people respond better with. And we developed a SMS program where, we have people subscribe for updates on releases of shoes, and it's a very different customer base, a different audience than we ever had before. It wasn't shifting one user into another platform. It was a incremental gain for us in terms of audience.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know things have evolved quite a bit since it was just Nice Kicks, and now you're bringing out Nice. What is the plan and the vision for Nice?
Yeah, if I can, I'd like to go back to the other. I didn't think of this right away, but I would say another big thing that changed in 2020 was our commitment to being a social first company. I mean, since the beginning, social media served the website, and we used social media as a way, like, yes, we did engage with people, not necessarily directly tying them to what was going on the website or trying to drive people to the website. But in 2020, we had a really big shift where we led with social. So the story was going to lead from social, adapted for and written for social, and wanting to speak and have a conversation with the audience in a voice that the brand developed on social. And that was, a big unlock for kind of a little reinvigoration into the brand.
Did you see a shift?
Big shift
in engagement.
Huge shift in engagement.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Nice and Future, that's something new from Nice Kicks.
Yeah. So
Nice, what's the plan?
Yeah, I mean, I've always, ever since I started started the website, I mean, nice is just a word I noticed quickly, like, wow, we use it in English so much. It's
awesome.
Yeah, we use the word nice all the time. And I was like, well, let me just go ahead and secure this name. And I knew, the brand had always been Nice Kicks, and I always wanted to do stuff. I had, of course, had many interests outside of sneakers, and it wasn't like I was going to make a nice everything, like nice cars, nice whatever, but I was just like, well, let me just think of, the key word to Nice Kicks was always the nice part for me. Like, that was the thing that was part of the phrase that was the feel good part anyways. It was a compliment on someone's shoes. You were saying nice kicks. Well, the nice is the part that's saying, like, I'm acknowledging and liking your shoes, So I had played with, I had a sketchbook where I would draw things in different ways. And it was in 2019, I started a rebrand. And it was the first time that we had separated Nice from Nice Kicks with logos. Yes. And actually had put a box around the speech bubble, actually boxed around Nice. And that was done intentionally because we knew we would transition to just dropping kicks out of the primary logo. Okay. And then by 2020, fully dropped it.
Does that mean that you're going to branch out of predominantly sneakers into fashion, street culture?
I think the thing that the the reason we did this is that it opened us up to have conversations that were broader than shoes, that might be more of like, say, an athlete story or a design story. Would it tie to shoes? Yeah, it probably would, but it was something where it didn't need to be so sneaker focused.
Right.
We wanted to just kind of open the aperture up, as well as give ourselves a little bit of flexibility as a brand.
It's a great brand name.
No, thank you.
You say it's everywhere.
Yes, all the
Used
time.
all the time.
All the time, yeah.
Great brand.
Yeah.
You know, vision-wise, has the vision for Nice Kicks changed at all? I mean, now that you're shifting to Nice, is there the vision change? I mean, obviously you had to adapt over the years.
It kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, it's one of the things that on the business side of things, like what we are doing more and more with brands is we're doing much more work in terms of content production with brands, with our brand partners, rather than just being a media outlet for them. We're helping them, create the stories, to tell the stories. So we're working closer to brands on the business side of things. Content is pretty similar, but we are expanding out to much more things. We have other stuff that it doesn't necessarily go under the brand name that we are building pages for. I guess one new thing, this element of has always been there with Nice Kicks. Actually, in 2006, it was when we started a column called Throwback Thursday, and the whole purpose of it was not about new shoes, but rather telling stories of the past. And that has now taken shape through Nice Kicks Vault, which is, kind of a look back at history of shoes, as well as look back at old videos and commercials and all that kind of thing. And we're expanding with other types of niche content vertical brands that way. Another example is Narvault. I love old, like 1980s and 90s skate culture, and myself and Caleb on my team who runs these accounts, we both have a knack for loving to find these old, gems of the past. And we found with skate culture, it's really awesome. But then we found like there weren't that many places online that had documented it. A lot of this stuff was just scattered.
Yeah.
So we were like, well, let's, first we created, the whole idea with Narvault was kind of like similar to the SMS project, is like, we're starting it out as an experiment, but we're starting it all also just for ourselves. See, how do we like this? So Narvault was half of just us wanting to make something for ourselves. And we thought, well, let's make something for ourselves. And also we think that there are other people who are like us who will enjoy it too. So that's, an example of something new that we're doing.
Well, that's cool. I mean, knowing what you know now, and having been around as long as you have, is there anything you wish you'd done differently, or you knew? I mean, in hindsight.
Yeah, I would have bought a lot of Nvidia stock. No, what I know now, I would say that trust your instincts. When you feel like there's a change,
right.
Get more aggressive on being quicker to test and experiment. Other thing. Don't wait to perfect it. Perfection is the perfect support for procrastination, and that allows you to miss out on everything.
That's great advice.
Also, too, sometimes let go of. You have to it's important for your brand to have a stance on something and mean something, but sometimes you need to be open to the flexibility that the world is going to change in a way you might not be comfortable with. An example, I guess, for us is that, just anecdotal, is me personally, I was very against the kind of the resale culture. I was not a big fan of it in the initial phase. And I kept my hands off of it. I'm like, I want no part of this. I want nothing to do with this whatsoever. And in hindsight, that was a mistake. I should have been open to the fact that, this was a shifting thing and it's where things were going. And I didn't necessarily like that things had trended towards this way, but the powers that be didn't do what they needed to do to protect it from happening, and that's beyond my control. So I'd say that's an example of something there.
Oh, I think that's great advice for anybody trying to get going with something.
Yeah.
Being adaptable and allowing the brand to have its own life and move with things as they change.
And don't be afraid to fail. Fail faster. It's also it's tough at times to make an investment into something, but you got to know when to pull the plug on it. You know, you on the business side of things, it's very humbling where you're like, wow, I missed this on this. I've poured in investment. It's not working the way I wanted it to. And there's two schools of thought. One is you try to, like, as your boat is taking on water, to dive below deck and try to patch the holes of the boat, or abandon ship.
Yeah.
One, you can go down with that boat and takes you with it, or the other one is like, just say on to the next one.
Yeah, it's that delicate balance between knowing when to continue persisting and giving up.
Mm-hmm. Know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Yeah. Is there any other advice you would offer for somebody in the business realm, or perhaps trying to start their own blog, maybe in a different space?
Don't start a blog. It's way too late now. I mean, and I'm not saying that as a protectionary measure. I asked myself this question. This is something that happened in 2020. That was kind of the light bulb that really hit. And lots of credit to Gabe Ocean and Desmond Moore, who like really spearheaded this change. But there was the question was like, what would Nice Kicks launch? How would it launch today? If Nice Kicks started today, what would it do? What would it look like? And when I posed that question to myself, like, a blog was not the answer. So does that mean I abandon it? No. But does it mean I put the resources of growth behind it? That's where it looks at. It's like, you have, as a company, you have to support key parts of your business for sure, but you also have to identify and have the humility to know when are certain parts of your business on a decline, and you're okay with that. You have to, like, say sustainable decline for this segment of the business, but that means I put my attention and resources towards what is new, or experimenting with what could be new.
So onto the sustainable side of things. You have being so involved in the culture, and sneaker culture being so closely linked to fashion as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of sneaker culture with so many of the hype drops with lots of the brands. That obviously kind of equating to fast fashion in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
What is your view on that? Your view on sustainability in the space with sneaker culture, fashion.
Yeah.
What are your views on it?
Well, sustainable is an interesting word for sneakers, because I think that oftentimes we hear sustainability used and people talk about the materials used, the impact of the product, on and on and on. I think that the sneaker business had a sustainability issue in terms of the volume that was being sold. There was a lot of growth and a lot of business set up based on an unsustainable level of volume that the consumers were expected to be purchasing. There was a huge period of years of just, crazy consumption of footwear. And the market got too hot, and too many products were being pumped out that didn't have much purpose behind them. And the business was unsustainable. Now, in terms of sustainability for consumers, it's an unfortunate thing that people don't want to hear, but like, everything you buy has, you are consuming resources. And the more you consume, the more resources you are responsible for. And, the carbon impact associated with that, and other types of impact.
But how do you see the big brands, or any brand for that matter, overcoming something like that? Because, there's always that difficulty that when you're a listed company, for example, and you make a claim that you're actually going to be selling less sneakers or less apparel,
right,
that has a detrimental effect on your share price. How would you envisage that playing out?
Well, I think that the businesses that have to evaluate and think and be more creative about things, which is that, there are only so many feet in the world, and there's only so many pairs of shoes that are ever gonna, they'll be able to consume, right? I think that you had something happen with the media businesses where there were only so many hours in the day that one could watch a television. There were only so many households you could put televisions in. So a lot of media businesses diversify their investments to, acquire or develop other properties or other assets that could support their television business. I think that the same thing should happen for footwear companies and specifically sports-based footwear companies. I think a brand like Nike or Adidas or Puma, and they are already doing this, but I think that they, could increase their investments into developing leagues that are a product that people are into, that consume. They have the backing, they have the brand power. I think that we've seen a little bit of it already. Nike has experimented with digital services. I think that a brand like them could definitely do more on that.
And with the existing, what is out there, I mean, I see, there's changes coming in Europe now as well.
Yeah.
Accounting for the second life of something and where it goes, when its life has ended.
Yes.
Do you see a lot of that shifting with the brands? I mean, have you seen a lot of change in the US at all?
So I think this is one big area of opportunity for brands. We've seen in some spaces, especially in the outdoor market, kind of second life marketplaces that are supported by either the retailers of the goods or the brands themselves. I think great examples are REI and Patagonia, right, where they are supporting the second life of their product. Initially, I think that I can totally understand why there would be some internal pushback on such a program. It's like, hey, you could be sacrificing a new sale. I think that they're incremental opportunities. We know that there are consumers who are looking for a second life product. A lot of times, it's price sensitivity is forcing them into that space. Right. There's also other types of niche reasons why people are looking for second life product. We saw in the sneakerhead world, people were chasing older product and they didn't necessarily care that it was worn or unworn. They were looking for something specific. So I think that it's an area of opportunity for brands to facilitate consumers of their products to, that they can be a part of this second life of the goods they produce.
What are your predictions for the trend changes in the space, particularly in sporting goods, sneakers? I mean, any predictions there?
Well, the trend is already here in terms of athletic performance trending upwards, specifically in running and golf. Running and golf were two sports that really took off in the pandemic. Pickleball, another one. It was people needed activities during the lockdown period. A lot of people discovered running during that time. I think that you see so much in the news about the market share that New Balance, Asics, and Saucony, Hoka, On have taken from some of the bigger brands that have been doing that through running. I expect that what you're going to see is even more investment coming by Nike and Adidas, and already Puma's doing it now on their running programs, getting better shoes for athletes.
Right. So the tech will evolve.
Yes.
Accordingly as well.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic definitely stifled innovation. Naturally, for any large organization where people were in office together and they couldn't be in office. I mean, something that I don't think a lot of people appreciate is that in the state of Oregon, which housed Nike as well as Adidas America, they were under lockdowns much longer than most of the rest of the country. And with the long lead times that it takes for footwear production, if you shut down collaborative innovation face-to-face for 2+ years, and you couple that with printing of existing product because of supply chain needing to fast track that, you're going to create a pretty big gap in terms of innovation.
Something from my side, I would like to hear your view on it. There's been a big shift in the sneaker game over the last year and a bit.
Yep.
Do you think that the big brands are going to maintain that shareholding that they have over the market, or do you see a shift there where people are going to start looking for more niche, or something that's identified specifically with their identity, something that they want to themselves? Do you see a shift there? Or do you think the big brands will continue to hold that space?
So I think that the market has always wanted to purchase products that they feel a connection to. What we had for a while was we had a relatively, in the relative sense, limited product availability for a time. And the brands they were very savvy at this, is that one shoe or one style was able to be marketed to many different identities and different people and different demographics. And that worked on the sales, but for a while, and then I think some consumers started to look around and say like, hey, I'm a 45-year-old guy and that's a 16-year-old over there and we're wearing the same sneaker. How did this happen? And the 16-year-old is definitely looking at the 45-year-old guy saying, oh no, like no way, no. Yeah, so I think you had a bit of that happening. And there's this thing that between the long tail and the short tail. And the algorithms of social media have a tremendous impact on this. I'll say the blood is on their hands for this. The algorithms really incentivized brands, marketers, and media to get much more narrow on the products that more people were going to be enthused about. So you had this natural sorting by companies and the products that you're making and media of what product you're platforming and talking about based on what's going to get the most engagement kind of thing. And constantly, producing and promoting sure sellers, right? And it's not just limited to footwear. This is happening in the movie industry. It's why you have, I don't know, how many Avenger movies, how many Spider-Mans, how many remakes of existing products. Yeah. So this addiction to retro and reprinting is across many industries. But I think we really see it in footwear because we've just been in this space for so long and we're like, wait, for how many years are we buying the same shoe?
Also a very fast moving space as well.
Yes. But I do think we're already seeing it. Starting to see, the market is starting to spread its wings outward into different kinds of product than they were 2 years ago.
Do you think that the consumer in that space that's looking for something different, is it still niche, the sustainability segment of it? There's quite a bit of greenwashing,
Yes.
around. Do you feel like the consumer are quite switched on about that and are quite aware? Was that still a very niche segment of the market that actually cares whether something's sustainable or where it ends up?
So the question I think is it the first reason someone is buying the product, or is it the fourth reason that someone buys the product? I think sustainability is still, for most consumers, the third or fourth bullet point as to why they'd make the purchase decision. It's not the first. There are some shoes, there are definitely products out there that they are from the ground up designed to be more sustainable like sourcing on the materials, the labor, the distribution, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's still one where it helps the consumer make the purchase decision between this or that, if it is more sustainable. Yeah.
So it's a point in the list. I want to buy these, or I want to buy those.
Or this caught my eye because it's something sustainable about it. Yeah.
So it makes them feel warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
And anything that you think that the consumer down the line, do you feel like they are going to start driving that sustainability message, or because it's so low down the ranking, it's not going to make a difference?
This is another thing that has changed a lot, is that you can't define the consumer as well as you once could. Like when we started in the early 2000s, like the sneakerhead market was so much smaller, and not just in size, but in demographics. Like diversity of demographics. Like people were a much tighter age range, right? They were from few metropolitan areas. They had fewer sources of influence at that time, like in terms of media sake, in terms of cultural sake. Now, sneakers is global, right? It's crossed many generations. You have people who are walking into sneaker stores that are all the way down to Gen Alpha, all the way up to Gen X. And that is that's a big broad range.
There's been a shift in the way people are dressing down, and
yes,
you watch it all over the world.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that to answer your question about solving for the consumer, it's which consumer.
Right.
So I think that brands have to be much more deliberate about like what product are we making for which consumer, which use case, which why are we solving for. The idea of making the one size fits all product that everybody across the planet is going to buy, that is a very, very, very challenging thing to do. I don't think you do it with a new product these days. I think you have to, and that's why I think there's so much value in the classics business where that's already been established. It took decades to build those things, those franchises.
But you don't think there's a bit of an onus on some of the bigger brands that are aspirational for them to almost create, to drive that longer term message of sustainability is something that needs to be factored in high in your purchasing decision, that down the line is going to then affect what the mass market is looking for, because everybody's aspiring to the top tier. They want to be in line with it.
Yeah.
You don't feel that those top tier brands, there's a bit of an onus on them to kind of bring that into their business speak?
I think that it's definitely there. I mean, you bring up greenwashing, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of that stuff, the cracks begin to show over time, and this is not just greenwashing. I think there were a lot of companies who wanted to stand for social causes, and then as time goes on, they were faced with the dilemma of which social causes do we support, which ones we don't. And when social causes intersect with each other, which ones are we going to support and not support? And they find themselves in dilemmas that I don't know that they necessarily prepared themselves for. So that is definitely also something for brands.
Oh, very true.
Yeah.
I'm looking very forward to seeing where NICE goes.
Yes.
And with all the things we've discussed around the brand and things that you're bringing in on that side. So some sort of left field questions now, as I think we kind of wrap things up. I would like to know, you and I chat quite philosophically very often over the years of our friendship. What would you change in the world that you think would have a big impact now? If you could change one thing, what would you do that would impact humans?
The biggest changes in human development and societal development has come from the availability of calories for consumption for humans. There still is a lot of hunger around the world, and nourishment is preventing a lot of places from developing. People think you can solve everything with money, right? And investment. Well, investment definitely important, but you got to start with the necessities. And food and water is still in short supply in so many parts of the world. And I think that would be the best thing. That would be the greatest thing to see, is more clean water and calories for consumption, because that allows the greatest tool that mankind has ever created, which is their brain, to fully develop. And if you look at the history of the world, it's been the places that have had the bountiful calories that have been able to make the best innovations. So I think the best thing that could happen is if more people around the world were better nourished.
Never thought of it that way. That's great. And then last one, what is your favorite movie and why?
Sandlot. And I as a child of the 90s, we were so fortunate to have an incredible series of sports films. So many sports films. I think of quite a few baseball ones too. But specifically The Sandlot, I could watch that movie a million times over. It's one I watch with my kids. They love it. It's a timeless classic. And I think it embodies what I love about sports so much. The way it brings people together from different walks of life and different, backgrounds. And they can all share the love of something. And that can be just playing sports together. So, yeah, I would say Sandlot for sure.
Maybe I've never heard it, but I'm definitely going to watch it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Matt, what are the future plans with Nice Kicks and yourself? What have you got coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, something that I noticed, it was like a little personal side of me, like running and fitness is a big part of my life.
Yes.
But something I identified by being in these communities of athletes and runners is that I recognized there were some familiar things to early sneaker culture. I noticed that, hey, look, I have this network of athletes from around the world where we haven't met, but we have developed these friendships online. We converse. We trade secrets of training tips or whatever, or of shoes. I also noticed that there are these in-person gatherings where, a message goes out through social media and you see these swarms of people gathering, and there are so many times where I'm like, wow, this looks like sneaker culture descending upon a shoe release or a party at a sneaker shop. And it's like, oh yes, there are so many parallels with that. We've already, like I mentioned before, that footwear brands are there's a lot of innovation and identification of running being an important part of their business. I'm like, well, I started this personally, again, another experiment, just being integrated in there, and that's something that we will, bring in with Nice Kicks as well, is, bringing in running and fitness culture, and helping brands navigate through that. So we're starting with, a little offshoot agency called Nice Fit, kind of a play on words, yes, fitness, but also helping brands get the nice fit between, what their message is and the right people to be working with to convey that message. Which is, kind of similar to like what you guys do in terms of you have your core thing, but you also like see what are other new ways the market is going and helping, serve that as well.
Address different verticals and see what's needed from the consumer perspective.
And can also be complementary all at the same time. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Matt. It's been really good having you here.
Thank you.
And hope to show you more of Cape Town.
Yeah.